You're listening to Live Stories on Talk Radio Wales. The people at the heart of your community telling it as it is.
In the news this week, an excellent piece by journalist Martin Shipton on what appears to be a scandal at the Senedd. Mark Drakeford has ordered an inquiry into Minister's dinner with the Green Man Festival boss and lobbyist. Welsh Government aim to spend £4.25 million of public money on a farm in Powys for the Green Man Festival. Lobbyist Cathy Owens hosted a dinner for two ministers, Jeremy Miles and Julie James, and the boss of the festival, Fiona Stewart. What's wrong with that? A simple dinner with invited guests. The dinner took place at the home of lobbyist Cathy Owens, the managing director of Daring Consulting, and a former Labour special advisor who has made a declaration identifying the Green Man Festival as one of her company's clients. One could speculate that the conversation around the dining table was nothing more than children, holidays, the crisis in Ukraine, and the best places for coffee, etc. That would be an entirely innocent and possibly naive speculation because of a loophole in Welsh Government ministerial code, under which informal meetings do not have to be declared. Climate Change Minister Julie James and Education Minister Jeremy Miles were not obliged to declare their attendance at the dinner. Nothing to see here then. A spokesman for the First Minister said, while ministers attended this social event in a personal capacity, the First Minister has asked the Permanent Secretary to look into the circumstances surrounding their attendance. England, Ireland, Scotland already have a register. Ministers should not formally meet with professional public affairs organisations, lobbyists seeking to influence the views or decisions of government. In the studio with us, via Zoom, we have journalist Martin Shipton, Neil McAvoy from Propel, and Gwenoro Jones, one of our own political pundits and our reporters. Gentlemen, first question is really, should we have a register? And if so, when? I'll come to Martin first because he's written the article.
Well, I think it's obvious that we do need a register. But that is just the starting point. I mean, first of all, we need to know who these people are who are influencing the Welsh Government or who are able, through their contacts, to have influence over the Welsh Government. And at the moment, because of this glaring loophole in the regulation, which says that it's only formal meetings that have to be declared, and I think what they mean by formal is where they are sort of official meetings which would be attended by civil servants as well, where minutes would be taken. If you are at the home of a lobbyist, as happened on this occasion, where there is no civil servant present, then that is perfectly all right according to the rules that are in place at the moment. And that just seems to be a glaring omission, and it really is something which is completely open to abuse. And I think, this whole situation really came to light simply randomly because somebody tipped me off who knew that this informal dinner had taken place. I then put the question to the Welsh Government and they came back and said that there was going to be an inquiry. I happened to know the date when this dinner took place, so it was very difficult for anyone to deny that it had taken place. But it makes us wonder, how many other times in the past have events like this taken place? How many times have there been meetings between ministers and people who want something out of the Welsh Government? They want some money or assistance in some way, and a lobbyist. This is really the nub of it.
Well, let's ask a man who knows about revolving doors at the Senedd, who's been there inside. And is that a fair representation? Is Martin saying, what he's saying is happening?
Yeah, I definitely went through a door, but that was on my way out. For asking questions about lobbyists. And in November 2019, I put forward a proposal that there be a register, and the Labour Party, Plaid Cymru, voted down my proposal. As Martin said, we need more than a register. We need to know who's meeting who, when they're meeting, why they're meeting, and how much money is being paid. Because I think there's a hell of a lot of informal meetings. People drink together, they socialise together, they eat together, and deals are done. And that's how Wales works.
Gwenoro, you've been an MP in Parliament. It's got a register. And you would say, really, I guess Wales is a small village. Everybody knows each other. It's unavoidable, isn't it, that people will meet like this?
But a lot of it is unavoidable because, as I said, that it's a village and people, as just been said now by Neil, they meet together, they socialise together. You don't know where they socialise, you don't know where they meet. It's a very difficult thing to control. But wherever it's in relation to ministers, I think any meeting, formal or informal, must be registered. That's number one. And this idea that they only had a chat informally, nobody believed that. It's been going on for ages, this sort of nonsense. So that's number one. The other one is, of course, I think we need to have a clear register of who these consultants are, what are their responsibilities, and who are their clients. That's the one. Who do they represent when they go to meet ministers? That's the one that's avoiding. So we need more details about Jared or whoever else. Who are their clients? So that we know if they go and discuss with ministers X, Y, Z, well, yes, there's a paid client. It's in the interest of our lobby to do well because we will get cash from our clients. Now, if you remember donkeys years ago, in the days of Major, there was the question of cash for clients and cash for questions and all that sort of thing. Now, Wales needs to get his act together and clear this up.
I'll go to Martin again because, Martin, as a journalist, you know that to follow a story like this and to really dig deep, you've got to have that information. And if you're searching and scrabbling around Companies House, looking at, into these companies, it takes an awful lot of time. The media in Wales doesn't have that time. We've lost that kind of investigative research. I mean, you were tipped off, really, and that was a plus. But how big a part does the media have to play in exposing this and making sure it's accountable, transparency,
Well, I think that the story which came out on Saturday has been very useful in exposing what's going on and really should be taken as, if you like, a trigger for major change and for major reform. So, yes, the media has a role to play, but ultimately the policing of this kind of relationship involving lobbyists should be done properly by the Senedd and by the Welsh Government itself, because at the moment we have this series really of glaring omissions in the rules, because we're talking about people being influenced by lobbyists, but you don't have to meet somebody to be influenced by a lobbyist. You could do it all over a telephone. So, perhaps there should be a record of when ministers or indeed people working for ministers talk to lobbyists by the phone, as well as in formal or however they want to describe it, informal meetings. I mean, I think this is absolutely essential. And I think at the moment there is some kind of examination going on by the Standards Committee of the Senedd into lobbying as it affects the Welsh Government and the Senedd. And I think that the Conservatives have actually said that they want this Green Man matter to be included in this look. I think that is very pertinent, and that's what should happen. But I think there is a need to take a far wider view of the kind of context that can exist between those people who want to influence the politicians in Cardiff Bay and the lobbyists who work for them. And I would agree that it's essential that we know how much people are being paid, because this is a very serious matter. And of course, what we have to remember is that if we go back to the very start and the inception of what was the National Assembly, we were told it was going to be a new kind of democracy. Everything was going to be open and transparent. And I'm afraid that isn't the case. And major change has to happen.
Well, Neil stuck his flag firmly to the mast, and he's been there at the centre of that. An inquiry, Neil, now. Martin talking about Standards Committee. Have you got any faith in that? Is this going to be kicked under the dining table now and sort of nothing to see again, move on, and business as usual?
Yes, I've no faith in the alleged Standards Committee. they'll do the minimum that they can get away with. I think what you have in the Senedd are Labour, Conservatives, A-Lib Dem, Plaid Cymru, effectively not really interested in change. And the media are part of the problem. I think Martin Shipton is an exception. He's a journalist of integrity, and Martin will try and see a story through to the end. There are many journalists in Wales who have no desire to follow any stories to the end. There is no interest, and what is frightening really in terms of democracy is whereby people who are lobbyists then become journalists, and you see journalists becoming politicians. And what we have in Cardiff Bay, it is a club, and devolution has created a new elite, unfortunately, and the very people that devolution should be benefiting, fighting for, creating a much better future for, have been left behind. Well, and there's a small group of people making a lot of money, and there's £17 billion a year being spent with very, very little scrutiny.
Yeah, Gwenoro, we heard there Neil talking about, and Martin, about the establishment of the Senedd, and in the run-up to the 2021 election, parties gave their stance on lobbying. They were very, very clear about the fact that it needed to be addressed across all parliaments. This was something that was a real issue within the Senedd. Neil himself has said it's corporate lobbying is when lobbyists are paid to influence or lobby politicians, legislation on behalf of clients. Welsh lobbying companies have been involved in recent scandals in Wales. We hear rumours, again, of these revolving doors at the Senedd for lobbyists. Is it a realistic description of influencers for large companies and charities that influence decision-making? How many cases of this do you think there are? I mean, Jack of the North talks about 48 charities that have sort of converged on Wales for homelessness in order to sort of raise an issue and then sort of leech in funding by being in Cardiff and having access to these people.
Well, look, people have worked out that it's easy money if you get involved with the Senedd and the Welsh Government. People are not daft. And these lobbyists as well are part of that. But let me take it a bit wider, as Martin was trying to say, and Neil called it a club. I've been saying that for 20 years. Unfortunately, it is a club. And the big problem is the relationship between Labour and Plaid and the general committee structures of what I mean by that, not the committees of the Senedd, but, investigations, who's appointed onto various commissions, who's getting involved with all sorts of inward discussions. There are invariably people, you can think of people who moved on from Plaid Cymru or from Labour onto BBC Wales, onto ITV, who had connections with lobbyists. The story is a revolving door. And of course, let's widen it a bit further. It's not just the Senedd, is it? It's also in local government. It's also in local government in a very, very big way, right across Wales. How appointments are made, who gets involved, who are asked to participate, who are asked to be part of the decision-making process. There is something pretty unhealthy about the Welsh political scene. There is something pretty unhealthy about what is no longer an open society. We might have an assembly, we might have a parliament, but we haven't got democracy.
Martin, do you think that the media should be provided, before, certainly during the process, with those financial details? Say the Welsh Government are looking at a big deal with Forestry Commission or with farming or whatever, that the media should be given all the background details. We shouldn't have to search around for this stuff.
Yes, I mean, the trouble is very often it's the case that the information that is provided is quite anodyne and it doesn't come at a timely moment. Clearly, there will be occasions when there are legitimate reasons for commercial confidentiality, but I believe that is a reason which is open to abuse, and that sometimes the Welsh Government, like other organisations, will hide behind that as a reason for not being open. I've also got very serious concerns, by the way, about the way in which they operate the Freedom of Information Act, because at the very outset of the then National Assembly's existence, to be fair, Rhodri Morgan, who was the First Minister after a very brief interlude when Alan Michael was, actually said and introduced a system where the accessibility to information was greater than was the case with the Freedom of Information Act itself. That all seems to have gone into abeyance. And I've had experience of trying to get information from the Welsh Government, and they do tend, and the same applies actually to the Senedd Cymru, they do tend to use all manner of excuses and loopholes and exemptions within the Act to stop you getting access to that information. I think that's very, very unfortunate.
Let's look at the Green Man then and the farming industry. In recent months, farmers have been critical over the buying up of productive farmland by Welsh Government in order to plant trees. This, according to Andrew R.T. Davies, leader of the Welsh Conservatives in the Senedd, is a blow to people trying to get into agricultural business, as the Welsh Government buys up productive farm, which most farmers could only dream of. Andrew Slade, Director General of the Economy Department, said the purpose of buying the farm was about the wider business and development of the wider Green Man business, adding that it would include sustainable development work, farming activities and a range of other things that would allow them to keep the operation in Wales. I'll start with Neil. Should Welsh Government, Neil, be buying up farmland, and for what purpose should it be used?
Farmland should be used for growing food. I mean, we should be looking at trying to make Wales a food independent country. And to me, it just seems to be another racket whereby, as Gwynora was saying, that there's a way of making easy money. And it seems that buying up the land, using it for purposes other than agriculture, it's a way of funneling cash out of the Welsh Government and out of the Welsh taxpayer. And we should be supporting farmers, we should be sourcing local, and we should be producing food, but we're not.
Gwynora, when did politicians become involved in buying hotels, investing in properties, investing in farmland? When did all this start? Did it start in your day? Were they sort of at it, for want of a better word, then?
Well, yeah. Look, I can't answer on that because the UK was abroad is a big country in terms of all those things going on. But I think it started in Wales. Wales has got involved with purchasing and controlling things. Cardiff Airport is a classic example. You know what I mean? Why should the government of Wales be involved with the running of the airport in Wales? Now, that's a big question. And it's probably a massive loss, huge loss. I want an airport in Cardiff, but if it's not viable, is it the role of the Welsh Government to take it over? That's one question. Go to the farming. I thought that agricultural land was for farmers. I thought agricultural land was for produce, for food production, be it for beef or sheep, lamb, or whatever. But now we've been told that it is for conservation. It's for tree planting. Instead of buying other sorts of land, why on earth buy viable, important, productive land to do this sort of venture? What is it all about? That is what I don't know. This is where Martin comes in with his freedom of information. What is it all about?
I think Martin, we can answer Gwynora, and I'm sure you'll answer him. Climate change is one of the biggest stories now in the media, isn't it?
Fair enough. But why purchase agricultural land for it?
Martin.
I have to say that I read the report which went to the Public Accounts and Public Administration Committee at the Senedd, which was meant to be justifying the purchase of this farm. And to be honest, having read the report, I'm not really much wiser because it was full of a lot of contemporary buzzwords like sustainability, etc. But in terms of what the reason for buying this farm was and how it actually links into the Green Man Festival, I'm not clear. The farm is about 7 miles away from where the festival is held, so it certainly wouldn't be used as a direct adjunct to the festival itself. It would be for some other reason. But that reason has not, to my mind, been properly spelt out. I mean, I find the whole thing very odd. And what is very peculiar as well, of course, is the fact that a decision on the part of the Welsh Government was made to purchase this farm before even an outline business case had been provided by the festival, by the Green Man Festival. So what seems to have happened is that we do know that the purchase of the farm followed an approach of some kind by the Green Man Festival to the Welsh Government, and they claimed that purchasing this farm, and they identified the farm, purchasing this farm would somehow help them with their business model, but the decision to buy it went ahead before the business case had actually been provided, which I find absolutely bizarre.
Neil, there are instances where we've seen that property has been valued way, way, way above the market value when Welsh Government sort of come along with the chequebook. One has to question that value for money and whether or not, as the allegations are really now, that, you know, these influencers, these lobbyists and those relationships have had some form of impact in the pricing of those things Welsh Government are buying with public money.
I think, in my experience, Welsh Government have underestimated value. I remember 2 shops were sold in Pontypridd, lost £1 million. The official on the Public Accounts Committee said that they'd forgotten to do an up-to-date valuation. Forgotten. And the person was then promoted and is now running Transport for Wales. The old Lisvane land deal, valued at 40 million, the Welsh Government got 2 million. I mean, when I was in the Senedd and when I was at the Plaid Cymru group, I was getting lots of information from business people in the city about, let's say, questionable business deals. And I remember asking Plaid Cymru for staff time to investigate. I remember the name of David Goldstone kept on coming up. And I wasn't given any staff time, and I was called irresponsible for wanting to investigate. And in Wales, as I said, you know, Martin is one of the few journalists you can go to with a story, with some questions to follow up. Freedom of information is being abused. I remember in 2016 asking for the minister's diaries because I knew Carwyn Jones had, if he hadn't lied deliberately, he'd certainly been wrong in saying that lobbyists didn't have access to ministers, because I knew somebody who was involved in organising those meetings. And they refused to give me the diaries. And it wasn't until February 2017, whereby Welsh ministers published their diaries. But that was only going forward, not retrospectively. The whole system needs an overhaul, and I think what we're seeing now as well with the new voting system is a centralisation of power and lists of people who will do as they're told. And my problem in the Senate was I wouldn't do as I was told. I was actually told that if I continue to ask questions about Berrin, that I would be finished.
Well, let's look at somebody who's been asking a lot of questions as well. Jack of the North, as I'm sure we all know Jack of the North and his blog. Serious questions have been asked about the company Deryn, the Carl Sargent issue. He's been following a number of alleged scandals involving organisations, lobbyists in Wales. His view is that we see here fundamental, uncomfortable truth about third sector. Lobbyists in Wales identify or invent a problem in order to get funding. Then, with the help of an ever-compliant media and understanding politicians, the problem must persist to guaranteed continued funding. Let the good times roll. Gwynoro, you know of Jack of the North and his blog and what he focuses on. Do we need more people like that? Do we need journalist time is scant, you know?
Of course, I mean, Jack, like Neil, have been vilified. Why are they vilified? Because they are disturbing the status quo. They are disturbing the comfortable way Wales is run and exposing issues and the powers that be, and they included, in essence, Labour and Plaid Cymru. We've got to accept that. That is how Wales is run. If you're not part of that scene, you don't count. You're not involved. And if you're not in terms of in tune with what they think, and Neil has just raised a very important point, we don't need to discuss it today. The new voting system for the next Senedd is going to make it worse, because there'll be a list system on candidates. And if you're a rebel or a radical or somebody that the party hierarchy doesn't like, you don't stand a chance of being on that list. Everything in Wales is in a control. Everything in Wales is being organised in a way you are member of committees outside the Senedd if you're part of us. And I've said it many, many times, I suspect no more than about 300-400 people run Wales. Nobody else but them.
Martin, apart from bloggers and people who are really, yourself and a small few in Wales that are sort of doggedly pursuing, the accountability, transparency, what more can be done to open this up and, bring it into the public eye?
Well, I think it's important that when something which is irregular comes to light, and I was very fortunate last week to get a tip-off, and, it's been given a significant amount of publicity. There's been a lot of reaction to it on social media, and I think it indicates that people are concerned about this issue. So I think that a message has gone to the politicians who may have been, in some cases, complacent, that it's really not something to be complacent about, and that they have a responsibility to change things and to undertake reform. Now, I always believe in giving people a chance, an opportunity to make change for the better. So I'm not going to start condemning those people in committees who are looking at this, like the Standards Committee. Let them do their job and hope that they will come up with a reform system in which people can have confidence. I very much hope that will be the case. But it's a question of keeping the pressure up, really, and banging on about it. And whenever some irregularity comes to light, to expose it.
Well, there's someone who's banged on about it for a long time, stood up for it and spoke up for reform and lost his seat as a result. Neil, what can be done?
I think we just got to carry on exposing what we can. I would call the politicians not complacent. They're compliant. They don't want change. As Gwynoro said, Wales is run by a very few number of people, and outside of the usual commercial lobbyists like Deryn, I mean, there are advisors to the government who, for example, are employed by the building companies who are doing nothing about the fire safety certificate scandal and the cladding scandal. And so there's so many different layers. I mean, there are charities set up by politicians getting millions of pounds of funding. And I mean, if you're unlucky enough to work for one of those organisations and then maybe get active politically, then your life becomes very difficult. I mean, we've had Propel members stand for election and essentially face the sack. I mean, it's just incredible. We've lost somewhere along the line. We just completely lost our democracy without realising it.
We have an increase now in the numbers of MSs for the Senedd, Gwynoro. Good thing. Are we good? Should we shake it up? Should we insist on changing some of maybe the rules and regulations for, given that we're going to double almost the number of MSs that are going to be acting on our behalf?
I was originally against it because I wanted the people who are there now to do their job properly, to do their job on scrutiny and monitoring and challenging, which they don't. Debates in the Senedd are pretty anodyne, and members asking questions, it's pretty average sort of questioning, quite honestly. And it's all, I'm sure it's all what makes me believe is all preset before they ask the question. They know what the answer is coming. Okay, let's have a larger Senedd. Fine. Issue is resolved. But the issue then is, what do those extra 20, 30 members do? What will be their responsibilities in relation to holding the government to account? And more importantly than anything, will they have the backbone to stand up for the people of Wales? That's the issue. Don't stand up for their party. Party is too strong in Wales. That's what's wrong with Welsh politics. Labour and Plaid Cymru are too strong, and they control their members, they control their MSs. That's the problem. Starts there.
Well, the jury is out until the inquiry concludes, but one can speculate, I think, safely, Martin, Neil and Gwynoro, that the halcyon days for lobbyists may be coming to an end in Wales. Gentlemen, many thanks for your time and speaking to us on the Talk Radio Wales podcast today. Diolch yn fawr.